art can have that capacity in you to, I think, make you relatable as a human to one another. Because in this day and age, you're moving so fast, and sometimes people have in their minds that, oh, it's a cutthroat world or whatever. But art really connects us.
Hi, thanks for watching MCR. I'm here with Tim Ozgener of Oz Arts, and we're going to talk about the 10th anniversary bash and everything that's been going on in the past 10 years.
Great, wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing this interview. I'd like to start by asking, it's the 10th year anniversary for Oz Arts, but also for Chatterbird, Intersection, and New Dialect, who is going to be at your 10th anniversary bash. And I was just wondering, what was the climate like 10 years ago? What was going on that started this influx of all of this?
Well, I mean, I think for us, we were really inspired by the movement of what was happening around contemporary arts nationally, specifically like in places like Miami, in Brooklyn, in Los Angeles, where you had areas that were formerly industrial areas that were being resuscitated due to contemporary arts. So, for example, in Miami, you had Art Basel that was happening, which, of course, is around contemporary visual arts, but that also spawned contemporary performing arts over there. Also, Wynwood area in Miami, which was a formerly abandoned industrial area that had high crime. Those warehouses were converted into contemporary arts, whether it was street art, then led to more visual art, and also performing arts came with it. And so that's those in Brooklyn, the same thing, and also in downtown Los Angeles, the same thing. So that inspired us because we were in a warehouse area parallel to John C. Toon. And even though our area is not one that is necessarily, well, crime riddled at all, but still it was an industrial area. So we said, why not Nashville? Why can't we turn our warehouse like has happened in these other cities? And then subsequently, ironically, around that time, you had, New Dialect with Banning Bolden, who had been trained at Juilliard in New York, who had been exposed to contemporary dance in New York City, came down to Nashville to start contemporary dance there. And then, Intersection and Chatterbird, I know with Intersection is also, I think that kind of when one thing happened, sometimes it's like throwing a stone into water, like once that ripple effect happens, then there are other positive things that come from that. So I knew that it was New Dialect's 10th year anniversary. I didn't know it was Chatterbird or it was Intersection. So thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. What
Yeah.
was the dream or the goal when creating Oz Arts?
Well, look, the dream or the goal was, again, we used these other cities and what was happening over there as their North Star. We're like, why not Nashville? And to create some place, honestly, we wanted to create a place that was initially more visual arts, visual and performing arts, like large scale wow factor visual arts and performing arts. The Park Avenue Armory in particular was an inspiration for us. Brooklyn Academy of Music or BAM in Brooklyn was an inspiration to us. So was Mass Mocha in the Berkshires. So we wanted to have a programmatic approach that both had performing arts and visual arts. However, we had people that were advising us that had experience in New York City, that were curators at MoMA and the Whitney, that said, look, if you start off with visual arts are the way that you wanted to do it. I mean, imagine walking into a space that had stalactites hanging from the ceiling, and every stalactite had a barrel of spice in them. Things like this that we saw, we wanted to bring to Nashville, but we were warned that that's very expensive. Number one. Number two, you're in a destination, so you need to get people used to coming to your location, and therefore entering with performing arts is a longer term sustainable way of building that relationship with the audience, getting people used to coming out there and starting more with performing arts than when there were visual arts. So with visual arts, we have addressed that by when people come into Oz Arts, we have an entrance hallway, and then we have visual art hanging on the walls there, and that's continually and quarterly curated to feature local artists.
So you have the best of both worlds. That's amazing.
Well, to be honest with you, the vision, the dream was to build something that was kind of a la the Armory or BAM or Mass MoCA. And I think that we have achieved that from a performing arts standpoint, and that we're building it from the visual arts standpoint. So yes, well, I'm proud that we have both.
So that is such a cute mug. So my next question is, who helped you along the way? I know you mentioned you had some people that were advising you about what you needed to do.
Well, we had a lot of people, fortunately, that helped us along the way, particularly at the very beginning when you start off something. That's the first 5 years requires like 100% commitment. So we had a gentleman named Jim Coddington, who was the chief conservator at MoMA. I happened to meet him because he's an alumnus of university school, so am I. So we met at an alumnus event for university school. He was tremendously helpful. A gentleman named Patterson Sims. Patterson Sims is in New York City. He has been a curator at MoMA and the Whitney and travels internationally to speak about contemporary arts. He was very helpful in connecting us to people that could help us along the way. Our initial artistic director, her name was Lauren Snelling. She had tremendous passion and energy and vision, and her husband, Russ Snelling, were instrumental in getting us off the ground. So those are people that come to mind right away. Certainly, we visited these places. So the director of BAM, Karen Brooks, was also very helpful to us. So a lot of other people, probably Joe Thompson, who was the founder of Mass MoCA, was very helpful to us. So the thing about the arts world that I found really nice and refreshing is that they were very forthright and open and willing to talk and help us, because the sense was, it lifts, the rising tides lift all boats.
The more art, the better. The more we can engage people with art, the better.
Right. Yeah. Because I feel like that art is a way, when I look back on my life and I think about things that were very impactful, I can remember the first play that I saw that really kind of flipped the switch for me. I can remember the first ballet that I saw and who I saw it with and when I was leaving that moved me. I can remember a movie that I saw that moved me. So it's really interesting that art can have that capacity in you to, I think, make you relatable as a human to one another. Because in this day and age, you're moving so fast, and sometimes people have in their minds that, oh, it's a cutthroat world or whatever. But art really connects us. It shines a light on what's beautiful. Part of the motivation to your question, which you're asking really good questions, is that my father almost passed away because he was going through a stem cell procedure for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he had to go through the stem cell procedure is when they, zap all of the cells in your body down to nothing, and then they have to harvest new stem cells to re-infuse it into your body. It's a very stressful process for anybody. So my father thought that he wasn't going to survive that. And, when he was laying in his hospital bed, then an Irish nurse came in and she said, "Can I sing you a lullaby?" And my father was like, why not? Go ahead. So she did. And he was so moved by that he started to weep. She started to weep. And then after that, he started to feel better. And then he started to paint. Like now is spring, so you have beautiful flowers and foliage around us. He started to paint the flowers and the colors of the grass and the leaves, and then he felt better. So he always said to me, son, in life, when things are dark, you will see a spark. and a light, and it will be art. So, right, so that was kind of the inspiration, is that when things seem kind of hopeless and dark and bleak, that your inspiration will be art. So, at its core, what our goal is at Oz Arts is we want people to leave saying, wow, that really that really kind of moved me in an odd way. Or or that really moved, or that maybe it didn't move me in an odd way, it just moved me.
Yeah.
Or or you might leave saying, you know what, it wasn't my favorite, but it was something unique and interesting. And so in either case, I think when people come to see things at Oz, the other thing that's unique is that we are so you feel like so close to the artists and the art that it's almost, then this was not something that we had intended, but you're you feel like you can feel the energy of the artists and what's
Like you're
happening.
part of it.
Yeah, and I think it's really palpable and powerful.
That is beautiful, Tim. That was really beautiful. And it was lovely hearing the words that, hearing your father's experience. I know he was instrumental in the beginning, from what I've read, of creating Oz Arts.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he was one of my best friends. He and I had this great relationship. He was, for most of his life, more empirical because he was raised as not raised, he went to a college to earn his master's in mechanical engineering. But later on in life, he became more artistic in that he's always been into arts and culture. He and my mother both met and fell in love in New York City when they were both going to universities over there. And they connected by getting inexpensive standing room only student tickets to go and see opera, ballet, going to museums, going to theater. So, arts and culture is kind of an important part of my family and what we find to be important and beautiful.
What do you think he would say about where Oz Arts is now compared to where it was in the beginning?
I think that he would be, from an artistic standpoint, I think that he would be very proud of it. From a financial standpoint, he'd be like, people need to, when you start something, when you
Wait,
start
wait, you just
something,
broke up just for a second. Start.
uh,
What would he
uh,
say about the financial? You just like froze for just a second. What would he say about the financial part?
from the financial part, he would be like, people need to give more money.
And that's true. People give more money to Oz Arts.
Well, look, the thing of it is that you start something. So whether it is a for-profit or nonprofit, you have to have an angel. You may have an angel investor. In this case, we believed in it and we said we'll be the angel investor. But when we talked to a lot of people along the way, which we talked again to a lot of people, they said that the community, once you start it, because we didn't start it as a private nonprofit. This is a public nonprofit. We're doing this. We started this because it would be beneficial for the city. So in order for it to be sustainable, then you have to have patronage. You have to have people
Yes.
that want to give to it. And by the way, it doesn't matter like what amount it is. I mean, it could be $5, it could be $10, it could be 500, it could be $1,000. I mean, obviously, it's not inexpensive to run an organization like this and put on arts like this. So it's important to have patronage, but I think it's important to have patronage at all levels, and you want to make sure that you have it, continually, because then it shows that the city values what it's bringing.
Yes. Yeah. Supporting our art. Exactly.
Right.
Um, Speaking about, it's really kind of goes back to your dad saying that there's a spark in the darkness and that's art. How did the pandemic affect Oz Arts? How were you able to still produce meaningful art in that time?
Well, I mean, that was a challenging period, because we had a tornado that came through that affected our area. For
Yes.
example, the building right next to us was completely demolished, but our building got missed. Then, right after that, you had the pandemic. So, it was a challenging period, because we had a tornado that came through that affected our area. For example, the building right next to us was completely demolished, but our building got missed. Then, right after that, you had the pandemic. pandemic. I think really solid leadership in place from our organization. Mark Murphy is our executive and artistic director. He joined us from Los Angeles, and previous to that, he was in Seattle. So I mean, he has had about now over 30 years of experience in leadership roles in the arts. He was hired also by the Disney family to start a similar arts center to us in downtown LA. And he did that for 15 years, called Red Cat Theater, which stands for Roy Edna Disney Cal Arts Theater. So Roy Disney and his wife Edna started it, but Cal Arts was started by Walt Disney as an educational institution for people wanting to go into the arts. So we recruited Mark to come here, even though Mark curated the season, before then, which was 2018, from Los Angeles. But when he moved here, though, it was difficult, I think, for all of us, and especially for him, being new to the city and then experiencing a tornado and a pandemic. But we started to curate. Fortunately, we had some other good people in our team, like Daniel Jones, for example, is our associate artistic director, who I think they all work together very good to find some virtual content that we could produce and show. We had one performance that was happening in our main space, and we limited that to 20 people. So as local artists dancing and in the middle of our space, our giant warehouse, and we utilized that to have 3 different areas that were spaced apart, and audiences coming in masked, that 20 people at a time, to go through there. So I was really quite astounded and proud of our team for curating and helping to work with artists to make that happen. So things like that, we were able to think creatively and outside the box and utilize the big warehouse space in ways that we might not have thought about.
Yeah, some very creative solutions. Have there been any lasting impacts from COVID?
Well,
Have you seen any difference in audience attending and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, I think at first with performing arts, it was slow, and probably the slowest to come out of the pandemic was the performing arts.
Hmm.
Certainly with a lot of international artists that we're talking about traveling, it was difficult to get them to travel. Still, we have some artists that come in that, want to be masked, and I would say not as much anymore,
Yeah.
fortunately. But there was one time where, the artists, they wanted you to be masked if you were around them. So really, it was interesting to see these international artists, where they came from and what their approach was to the pandemic. But now it seems like that all of that has kind of
Gone away.
subsided.
Yeah.
Fortunately, yeah, because I think most people
Luckily,
are.
thankfully,
Yeah, I
yes.
think most people are done with it.
Um, I know diversity is such a
Hmm.
huge part of Oz Arts, and many people are unaware of the diverse character of Nashville because they just think of it as, like honky tonks and stuff. But there's a large Latino population, there's a large Ethiopian, a large Kurdish population, and I wanted to ask you about your experience as a first generation Turkish Armenian American and Nashvilleian, wondering what the migrant experience was like for your parents versus you as a first generation.
Hmm. Well, again, my parents, my father went to Columbia University to get his mechanical engineering degree on a scholarship, and my mother went to Bank Street College of Education as a Fulbright scholar. So they worked really hard in order to get there. Once they were there, then they fell in love. They met at the International House, and through the mutual interests such as arts and culture, they fell in love and eloped to Tennessee, again for education, because my mother went to get her PhD at Peabody School of Education, which is now part of Vanderbilt. So, and then when my sister and I were born and raised here, fortunately for me, going to University School of Nashville has always been a school that has been very cognizant of diversity, that has embraced diversity, that has made it a part of their culture to have diversity, because the reality is that's the world. When you get out of the world, you're not in a bubble. I mean, if you want to, I mean, I think the richness of life is being able to see these different places and being able to interact with people. And I've had the good fortune of growing up. In summers, I would go with my mother and my father to Istanbul to visit relatives over there. So as a result, I know Turkish. I can speak pretty fluent Turkish. And that also kind of opened my eyes to the rest of the world. So part of it is that, through Oz Arts, I realized that a lot of people may not have had the opportunity to go and visit these different cultures and places in the world. That's why I think it's really great that we're bringing in these different nationalities, and their art forms and culture to Nashville. I mean, you don't have to get on a plane and travel 24 hours to go and see and experience part of the culture. I mean, if you come to Oz Arts, you can be able to experience that here.
How do we see United States or Nashville 20 years from now? I see it more colorful, more energetic, more avant-garde, and I think we will become more of a leader in this world by allowing other immigrants to come here, and the immigrant, like my wife said, integrating in this country. They can bring their colors, different colors. So like a rainbow, we are going to be exploding all over this country, and of course Nashville. And I would like to see that.
So I feel like that, growing up in Nashville, as first generation, I didn't, fortunately feel I didn't feel like I was, ostracized or different in any way just because of my environmental circumstances. Maybe had I gone to other places that I would have, but I did not. But for me, I think, diversity is important. Our family's always been one that we feel like everybody should be given an equal playing field. We feel like everybody should have access to really good education. My mother was an educator. She taught at Tennessee State University for 30 years after she got her PhD at Peabody, and she trained teachers. She trained teachers to go into Title I schools in Nashville so that, these teachers could help these kids try to elevate themselves from whatever circumstances they may have come from. So we feel like that's really important. And we feel like art and creativity is really important for young adults and youth as well, because some of these schools, they have their arts programming cut. Well, whether somebody becomes an accountant or an artist, having that creativity at an early age, particularly 0 to 5, and working with their hands helps with their brain formation and helps them with creative thinking and complex problem solving down the road. So we like to provide arts and have arts access to those that may not have it as well. So I know I kind of veered off your initial question.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Because we need art in our lives, and it's just like you said, whether you become an accountant or an artist, you still need an outlet for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You still need a way to experience art, and like you say, that's what brings us together. And to that, what are the next 10 years? What are they going to look like for Oz Arts? Where are you going forward?
Well, I think that we still want to continue to bring in programs that one of the goals that we had from the very beginning, speaking of my family and not just my father and I, but also like my wife and my sister and my mother, and we want people to leave saying, wow. So that's kind of one of our goals. So we want to continue to bring programming that moves people, that generates that kind of, wow, I can't believe that I just saw that and that this is here in Nashville. So that's one of the goals, is to continue to raise the bar with the artistic performances that we're showing. We also want to find ways of listening and responding to the community. So if there are things that local artists need or want or something that we can provide, we'd like to provide that. When we first started, for example, we would have these quarterly showcases of local artists that happen on Thursday nights. So we would call it Thursday Night Things because the genre was changing all the time, and it could also be a big collaboration. Now we have an event called Brave New Works Lab. So that is, we have an open call to local artists. Mainly it's performative in this case. They send submissions. Our team looks through the submissions and selects 4 different artists that can showcase their work. And that usually happens in June. And the submission process and the vetting process usually happens at the beginning of the year. So now we have 4 different artists this year for Brave New Works Lab. However, in their pieces, they're featuring a lot of other collaborators or participants that are local artists. So things change, and sometimes, like, I could not have predicted that we would have changed from like Thursday night quarterly showcases to a once a year showcase where you have multiple submissions. But I feel like listening and responding or being aware of what's happening in your community and trying to meet the need is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ozarts is such a wonderful place. Whenever I go, I feel like you can be completely yourself and you are welcomed there. And
Yeah,
art is celebrated there. And
that's great.
I want to thank you for having this interview with me, for your very thoughtful answers. I think your dad would be really proud of what it's become. And for those of you watching, the 10th anniversary bash is on Friday, April 5th at 8 p.m. and you're invited.
Yes.
So come on down there. There'll be a link down below for you to check out.
Yes, thank you very much. We have a lot of local artists that throughout the way have really been a part of it and have helped. And I appreciate you saying that and having that feeling, because that in and of itself shows that that's kind of who we are, what our values are. And it's really great that you feel that way, because again, we feel like, everybody should feel comfortable. It's one of the dynamics that I like a lot is that it's okay, whoever you are, however you got to where you are, if you have love in your heart, and as long as you don't want to harm anybody else, you know what I mean? But that you come in, that you're accepted. You're a human being with a heart and a mind and lungs. And I mean, so everyone should, it's okay to be whoever you are over here.
Yeah, everyone deserves love exactly as they are.
Yeah, that's right. And we're all celebrating and have a mutual interest, which is art. And, that's the thing about art, is art can be a bridge that leads to understanding of one another. Very powerful.
It is. It is. That's beautiful.
And the event on the 10th anniversary, everybody's invited. It's in essence free. If you want to come in and make a donation, then great. Like my father said, make a donation. So
yes.
But it's going to be really well curated, and it'll be a lot of fun, and it's going to feature a lot of local artists that really merit and deserve attention. So I expect it to be a beautiful evening, and I encourage everyone to come.
I'll be there.
That's okay. Great. Thanks, Bethany.
Thank you so much for meeting with me, Tim.
Oh, absolutely. You were awesome.